Oh, I'm looking at you waiting for the go. There's a whole thing about being a human being where you need to either belong to something or be in a group of people.
Yep.
Or you crave solitude, right? Now, tribalism, friendship, solitude.
Okay.
I want to look at loneliness. I want to look at the devastating effect it can have on your mental health if you're on your own too much.
Yep.
I want to look at different sides of friendship and acquaintances and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because loneliness worries me. I have always been able to be on my own and be quite content.
Yep.
Because as long as I'm doing something or there's a reason. So when I was ill, I was on my own all the time because, I was okay with that because I knew that, I was a sweaty mess because I had temperatures all the time and it was horrible. And I did have my dog, actually, Skylar.
Yep.
So I wasn't totally on my own, but the being on my own, having, I suppose I had people to reach out to, so I wasn't lonely.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what I'm looking to do is to investigate if you are the type of person who fears being alone, what's the trigger for that? Why are people alone? Why are there people who consider themselves friendless? And why are friends so important?
Yeah.
I mean, I used to have this massive group of people that I assumed were all either fans or friends or sycophants or after the drugs in my pocket.
Yep.
But I never really acknowledged that.
No, doesn't sound like any of them are friends then.
No. And then when I got clean, disappeared. There was no one left. And that's a real eye-opener to me. That's the only time where I've considered loneliness. Because I'm very fortunate. I've always had a lot of friends.
Yeah.
But the friends I have now, you and Nikki and, George and, that's, Alex the hippie. And there's about 5 or 6 people in my group, like core group.
Yep.
But only 2 or 3 of them that I talk to every day, mostly because of situation.
Yeah.
So why do people rely so heavily on having friends, like an enormous amount of friends?
Well, these days it's become important in some people's eyes to have loads of friends on social media, isn't it?
Which, of course, aren't friends.
Not friends at all.
There was a time when I had 1,100 friends, and I can tell you this, I didn't know who they were, most of them.
No, but there's a difference between, even in the real world, there's a difference between mates and friends, isn't there?
Yeah.
I did a little bit of research knowing that we were doing this. And Movember, the men's prostate cancer and mental health charity thing, did a survey a couple of years back, and of the people surveyed, 1 in 3 people said they didn't have any close friends.
Right. 1 in 3?
Yeah. And,
okay.
And 1 in 2 people of a subgroup of the survey, 1 in 2 people, well, people were asked, have you got someone that you would turn to in a, to discuss something serious like a money problem or whatever? And 1 in 2 people said they couldn't think of anybody.
Right.
So the amount of people that are experiencing loneliness, which is obviously very different to being alone, is huge. Right. And like all these things that we talk about, about thinking you're the only one that it's applying to, there's probably plenty of people out there that are alone and thinking, oh, poor me, I'm the only one.
I'm the only one that's on my own.
I bet everyone's out there having fun. But by those stats alone, just massive, yeah. So, yeah, your question is why? Why is it important? Well, it's got to go back to tribalism, isn't it? It's got to go back to
the base level of tribalism, when we first started crawling out. Even a little before that, because one of our ancestors, right, like monkeys are traditionally insular. They don't want to be with other people until one day, one monkey pointed the way to some other monkeys where the food source was.
Yeah.
And do you know what that is? That there is the spark of civilization. Helping people get to a food source, showing that a group dynamic can get more than a singularity can. And obviously there's going to be someone who wants to fight to be the top dog, but everyone else has to get on and do the work.
But then that reaches a limit, doesn't it? And then we seem to have now got to a point where culturally we're now disparate again.
Yeah, but if you look at it this way though, like different species of monkeys didn't tend to interact.
Right.
But even the same species of monkeys didn't interact until there was a conscious decision, a group decision, where they realised that actually, if they were in little tribes, they could get something done. They could organise themselves, and they were, instead of waking up being hungry because they haven't got any food and having to go look for it, then somebody else had some food, and then you went out on a full stomach, and instead of just hunting and gathering for yourself, you did it for a group dynamic. And I think the start of that is very telling. You know, that point towards, you know, a food source and, you know, being linked to the start of society, you know, that's where politics comes from. That's where, you know, interpersonal connection comes from. Mm-hmm. Because before, everyone was insular and the mating was tended to be violent, you know, and all of that. I read a book, you know, as you do.
Yeah.
So also when you go up through things, friendship used to be in your class group and your peer group.
Yeah.
So Victorian England, you're not going to have many, you know, middle to higher class people living in a Georgian townhouse, you know, a townhouse wouldn't be Georgian Victorians, would it? But, you know, who would never mix because they've got servants. Mm. Now that, to a certain extent, people think has gone. But there is definitely a class system. But I do have friends. That are considered, you know, high levels of society, middle class, lower class, whatever. I don't consider anything. I just say, oh, well, that's Peter from the manor house. There's Matthew from the manor house. And then there's George who cuts the grass. Different George, not that George. So, you know, I think it's how you're brought up, is it, a little bit?
My closest friends, I would still consider are my schoolmates, which some people think is weird.
What makes that weird? What, that you've kept in touch with people because you...
Yeah, people do find it really weird. I think I didn't go to university. A lot of people seem to translate that, and their best mates are back at university. But
probably
mine,
because they spend so much time drinking.
Dave, that we've spoken to on the pod, and Rob and Steve and Justin, they're my four best mates who I see very, very rarely, which is what we all do these days.
Yeah, but that's okay, isn't it? Because they are your best mates. So when you see them, it feels like you were talking to them yesterday.
It does still, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's where my core friends are. Mm-hmm. But I've made a very close friend in you over the last few years.
Yeah.
So I think it can come from anywhere. But it's that maintaining that contact that maintains the friendship, and as we've found out, opening up about stuff and
being able to communicate with each other gives you the ability to be friends.
Yeah.
Because if there is no middle ground and there is no contact, you don't even have to think the same way. You just have to be able to look at each other's differences, but still be able to converse on a level that's the same.
Yeah.
My wife said something very astute the other day, and I had to write it down because I've got a memory like a sieve, as you all know. Okay, if there's no connection, then that is the basis of loneliness. If you are somebody who doesn't have a strong connection or bond with other people, then that in itself is the cause and the symptom of loneliness.
Yeah.
So, what I'm going with that is there are some people in this world who find it very difficult to outwardly communicate. Yeah. And you might not necessarily know, right? Somebody who's gregarious at work, who can talk to the customers and do all that, at home or out in social situations where they're not allowed to wear their work mask, they can't communicate. And if you can't communicate, there's no connection.
Yep.
Now, a connection... Everyone thinks, oh, connection, it's not sexual. It's not, it's a connection, i.e., we are able to communicate on an intellectual level that stimulates both of us.
Yep.
Because if you couldn't react to the things that I say, and I can't react to the things you say, there is no dialogue. Therefore, we would not be friends now, would we?
No.
Because why would you? Obviously, friendship has to... A lot of people think you have to get something from friendship. That has to be, well, what do you get from being friends with them? That's scary, because that shows how mercenary human beings are.
Yeah.
Do you
yeah,
not?
I think that's a fairly poor basis of a relationship is what you can get out of it, isn't it? Really?
No, but but people do people have asked me, why are you friends with them? What do you get out of that? I'm like, and I was genuinely taken aback. That happened in a boozer as well, and we hadn't even started drinking. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you've got to get something from a friendship, haven't you, or something? And I'm like, no, you don't. That's the whole point. Because friends, you don't need to have something given to you to be friends. Like, I don't buy your friendship by buying you a packet of biscuits once a month. Do you know what I mean?
No. But
have you never had anyone entertain the thought of the fact that you get a tangible thing? Obviously, we get conversation. We get a way to, deal with some of our problems when we talk together. Right, but I don't demand that of you. Do you know what I mean?
No, but I have experienced the other end of that, where people seem to be my friend because of what they get out of me, and that soon gets realised, and then you start to distance yourself from people.
That was a camera cap.
Yes.
That was thrown across the room by the producer. He used to be my friend,
So, before I was really interrupted. So I have had, I guess not even friendships, but what I thought were friendships with people that have then shown their true colours, and you find out they're only there to get money or favours or whatever out of you.
What do you think is the definition of friendship?
Someone you can turn to, someone you can rely on. So those groups of mates from school, as we know from the podcast previously of talking to Dave.
Yeah.
If I was in a situation like Dave, and that something catastrophic had happened to me, I know I could turn to those four guys, and I know I could turn to you, and I know I could turn to Nicky. Yeah. Outside of that, I couldn't name someone that I would turn to.
No.
So that's friendship, is just knowing that there's that bond there. And admittedly, obviously, for those four guys at school, that bond was built when we first met when we were 11 and continued through our childhood.
What's another word for bond?
Connection.
Have
I walked straight into that?
You see? So without that connection, without that bond, those people would not be special to you. And also, I think a lot of people have to realise you can be a big tough guy, right, and still have friends and acknowledge the bond that there is, because without that, what have you got apart from solitude? Because if you come at friendship in a way of saying, well, people are friends with me because I do this, and this, and I'm popular because of this, well, you're kidding your fucking self, because none of these people have a connection to you, apart from if you're famous, for instance. They want a connection to fame by knowing you. They feel defined, maybe pushed up by the fact that they know a famous person.
Yeah.
Which is a bit shit.
Yeah, it is a bit.
I'm going to name drop now.
Good.
Right, I did a charity concert once, and Emma Thompson was the ambassador for the charity, which was basically and still is a charity that talks about trafficking, human trafficking. And we made this whole album. A guy called Phil Knight, who's a very talented drummer. He's a good songwriter too, and we all did a song each. And basically, after the show, I was talking to Emma Thompson, right? And all I was thinking was, my sister would kill to be here now. But Emma Thompson said, we just had a conversation, and there's a picture of us both laughing. And I said, okay, that's fine. And then somebody said, oh, who's your new mate? And I said, oh, she's a human being. And she heard me, do you know what I mean? Because I said, look, she's a human being. She's talking to, it doesn't, does it matter that she's famous? And then she heard me and said, you know what? It's so refreshing that somebody doesn't see the little silver cloud of film star. They see a person who's involved in a thing. Now, I didn't at the time realise the gravity of that situation. But there's, Jim Distortion, some singer from something, talking to Emma Thompson, very successful actor. But at no point did that consciously change the way I talked to her or interacted with her. So I was obviously having a good day, that day, and we had fun and we were talking. I just think that, we're not friends. I can't phone Emma and go, hey, how's Hollywood? But, so that kind of thing, looking for fame, looking for a tenuous connection to something through somebody else, that may well suggest loneliness in the first place.
I think it seems to suggest a lack of understanding of what friendship is, surely.
Yeah, but the lack of understanding can be because they don't know what it is. They haven't had friendships. I mean, if you look at it, right, I no longer have any link to anyone I was at primary school with. I remember who they were. Yeah. I mean, my two friends were Ben Moody and Carl Knight. And I used to go to Carl Knight's house every Saturday for lunch because obviously both my parents were working. And his mum, every single Saturday for about 3 years, burnt the baked beans.
Excellent.
Because we had baked beans on toast. We never had anything else. It's very odd. But do you know what? To this day, I still like my beans to have been cooked to the point where they have lost their beaniness. You know what I mean? So what does that show you? That shows you that friends and baked beans have a tenuous link.
Yeah. Nice.
I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about anymore. Well, I mean, what I'm trying to say is, right, is if I saw those two now, because we had such a strong friendship back then, we would have some kind of tentative conversation.
Yeah.
But there's a link. There's a connection. You were part of my childhood growing up.
Yeah.
What happens to the people who go to school and are insular and are shy, or they're fat, or they're spotty, or they're ugly, or, all of these words?
Well, they get isolated at school and then they spend the rest of their life being like that, I guess, unless they
find a way out of it.
Yeah.
How do you break that cycle? How do you get out of that if you are on your own? What's the way, to dig yourself back out into the surface?
You have to work at it, don't you? I mean, this part of the pod I was listening to earlier was talking about how, particularly men as they get older, their social circle decreases. And we all have this, as you do, you meet at a wedding or a funeral, or someone actually bothers themselves to arrange getting together, and you have a great time. You go, we must do this more often. I'll be in touch, and you never do.
No.
And this guy was saying, there's a term for it in a distant friendship group of being the Sherpa. You have to be the Sherpa. You have to put effort into it. And apparently,
you have to carry the weight.
There's a very distinct difference between the way men lose their friendships and women don't, because women, without getting too far into sexual stereotypes or gender stereotypes, women are just better at it. Women put the effort in. Women tend to be the people that remember people's birthdays and arrange social functions and all of that stuff. So it is very much more men that lose their friends as they get older versus women who carry on because they put the work in. Like with anything, like losing weight, gaining weight, running. If you don't put the effort in, it ain't gonna happen. No. And I think when you're at school, that environment is there, and you're with those people all day, every day.
So friendship by circumstance.
Yeah, but when you're an adult, it gradually dissipates because things become, in your head at least, more important. Work, family, whatever. And then, therefore, that social interaction, if you're not careful, disappears completely.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's well documented that I spent a lot of times in boozers and being drunk and out of my face. But after that, when I was running a pub, the people on the other side of the bar, I felt like at the beginning, these people were my friends because they talked to me, they bought me drinks, they interacted on a social level. I had to morph into something. I didn't know anything about football. I couldn't give a shit about it, right? But every day, the Sky Sports Channel was on. So the key headlines would come up for the day. So when these guys, like Big Lee and then Scotty at the end of the bar, and the old man who used to drink Guinness, can't remember his name, bless him, he's dead now. You know, they used to talk about, you know, what's happened in their football team and do all that. And then they'd go, and I started paying attention to the headlines because they go, oh yeah, Jim, what do you think? And then one day I came out with, well, you know, this, and this. And they were like, what the fuck happened there? And I said, because I want to socially interact on your level, I need to learn about what you talk about. Yeah. And they went, why would you bother? And I said, because it makes my job easier. And I can look after you lot when you're banging on about who plays what, who scored when, why David Beckham did a back kick on some Euros thing and got sent off. See, that was the timescale. Mm-hmm. You get to learn after a while, though. When you're not there, it's not you that they want. It's the person behind the bar serving their drinks. Mm. And if that person happens to be able to communicate and it shows an interest in them, their egos are stroked by that.
Well, it's a mutually beneficial thing, isn't it? You get the business in the pub. Mm. They get an environment that makes them feel like they're important.
Comfortable. And that's the best way. You know, all these restaurants where you get treated like shit, that's why they close after 10 minutes. Mm. Do you know what I mean? Boozers, where the people are all about the money and the pain and the blah, blah, and it's so difficult. Well, don't do it then. Mm. Because you're never going to succeed. You know, that's the thing. And you know what? As a businessman, business is hard. Yeah. Right? Especially in a business like mine, it's hand to mouth. George is the same. You know, he has to fight. You have to make sure there's enough money to pay that rent so you can go in. Don't worry about paying yourself or looking after your family or anything. The place where you work has to come first.
And do you think that's why or how you've become comfortable with talking to the bin man or the director, or is that your childhood, your education that's given you those skills?
That's my father that's given me those skills.
Yeah,
because he was always friends, right, with such a diverse group of people. Right, so there's a guy called Brigadier Stuart Richardson, who was second in command of the military in this country at the time, right? He was a guy that you respected because of what he'd done. Also, you know, the IRA knew exactly where he lived and what he did at all points. And at no point did he hide away. He just said, well, if they're going to do it, they're going to do it. And he got on with it. His son, sadly, was killed in a car crash. My father, being the pastoral caregiver that he was, looked after them. And so every summer, we would go to one of his holiday cottages in Norfolk because he knew damn well that we couldn't afford to have a holiday. Because being a vicar on 11 grand a year with 3 kids is not great. So that was one of his best friends, Brigadier Stuart Richardson, right? My dad comes from a working class background, does all that, but he also ended up as the chaplain of Westminster School. We talk about him a lot. Mm. I think we should go to France and do a show. What do you think?
Great idea.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, because my father had an all-encompassing acceptance of a lot of different strains of life, I was then watching him.
Did he teach you that, or did you just absorb that?
I think I absorbed it. He never... my dad wasn't the kind to go, this is how you must act, blah, because he knew damn well I'd be like, yeah, whatever, mate. I'm going this way. You go over there. You got any cigarettes? That would be it. But he, I absorbed all that. Also, my mother too was, she had to deal with the Mothers' Union. Mm. Mothers' Union are a scary bunch of women, right? Bless them, they do good work and all of that. But they knit teddy bears, okay?
Yeah.
Now, there are 2 stories I want to talk about the Mothers' Union very quickly. The first one was when we moved to Trull, which is behind Taunton in Somerset. Mm-hmm. They decided to give me a welcome gift. I was about 4, and they gave me a knitted teddy bear with like a human-looking face. And this thing traumatised the living shit out of me, right? And to the point where I remember saying to my mother, and I might have made this up, well, why are they cursing me? Why have they given me this? And she said, it's a teddy bear. They're being nice to you. I'm like, look at it. And that's the scariest thing in the world, right? Right. And also, just as a small aside, I decided that the Mothers' Union needed to see how well I could form an arc with my own urine.
Oh, excellent.
So I stood in the garden outside the French windows, age 4, and showed them how high I could wee in a thing. And all of the women rather subconsciously were like, oh, that's very good, dear. And my mother, you've never seen her move so fast. She grabbed me in mid-pee and took me around the back of the tree and went, what are you doing? And I remember that. And I said, well, I just thought, you know, it was clever. Look what I can do. And she went, and she started laughing. I can't argue with that. You know, so all of these things, my mother was able to deal with, you know, the older generation, the younger generation. Also, if women came and wanted to talk to another woman about their problems, they would go to my mother, not the vicar. They would go to the vicar's wife. So the vicar's wife was seen as somebody included in that pastoral care. So I've seen it all, you know, I've seen it all in different ways. So I absorbed all of that. I'm pretty intolerant as a human being. Not quite as much now, but I don't like stupidity when somebody is trying to outsmart you, but they don't, you know, all of that one-upmanship crap.
Yeah.
When they're trying, I think they think if they impress me, they can be friends with me. That's happened a lot in the past. And it's like, I don't need you to impress me. I need you to have some connection. Mm. And also nowadays, if you are friends with me, it's a very dull experience.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
Yeah, I mean, you know all about it. Because I don't, you know, apart from my 50th birthday where I got absolutely twatted, but everyone was smiling. Everyone had a good time. Yeah, and yes, I got twatted, but I didn't revert to form and pick a fight with the biggest man in the room. You know, I don't need to do that anymore. I don't know why I did it in the first place. Just get my head punched every night. But back to the core subject. If we're all looking for like-minded people and people that are the same as us, will do what magnets do. Right? On one side, there's some kind of middle ground. On the other side, there's repulsion. Yep. Because you see the bad sides of yourself and other people. Do you think?
Yeah, that was a bit profound, but yeah, okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to be profound.
No.
I think that people are looking for friendships because human beings are not solitary animals.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, we are animals. You know, we're just ones that apparently have learnt a few things, like how to destroy a planet. And the search for money is more important than anything else.
Yeah, they're two big topics, and that's I think at the core of the disparity that people experience now.
Mm.
That sense that we've said before, that sense of community, whether it's a church or whatever it is, that sense of community just isn't there anymore. No. So we have to fabricate it. So the men's walk and talk thing that I'm a member of, there was a guy on the WhatsApp group yesterday that's gone through a pretty horrendous event, and straight away everyone's piling in. We're here for you. We're here for you, and that, as I think I said before, is an unexpected benefit of that group is that we've all become a support network. They're proper mates now in that group.
Yeah.
Which I think a lot of the guys that have joined that group didn't have. A lot of them have been pushed into it by their partners to say, oh look, I've seen this on Facebook, you know, you could do with getting out, you could do with making some friends, you could do with getting some exercise and some fresh air.
Nobody wants to hear that though, are they? So they're going to come at that maybe with a negative.
Yeah, but there's people now from, I guess, late 20s up to probably 60s.
Yep.
All interacting, all got a common group that they can turn to and contribute to. And it's formulated this community, which is what you would have had if you all lived in a village and you didn't have cars and you just went to church together on Sunday.
Yep. It's funny what makes community, right? Because the biggest time in Britain's life for community was after or during and just after the war.
The war, yeah.
Because everyone had to muck in together.
Yeah.
Because of rationing, somebody had this, somebody had that. Somebody had kids, somebody didn't. You can have my sugar, can I have your
kids?
Yeah, no. But, you know, there was toing and froing and a genuine need for people to join together.
Yeah.
And they might not have been friends outside of that situation. They might not have been people who would talk to each other. But, you know, in the class system, you know, they obviously huddled together in that way. Also, there's a lot to be said for being in an underground station with 250 other people when the blitz lasts for 3 days.
Yeah.
So there is no group dynamic anymore, because also the loss of organised religion and its importance. You know, how many young people do you know who go to church?
Yeah, no.
Well, I know two, both because they're members of my family, but also one of them is a singist who does singing type stuff, and the other one goes because she enjoys the ambience of it. If there's no religion and there's no group dynamic organised for you, very rarely will people organise it for themselves. So
No.
your group of guys, who started that?
Two guys that met through being dads at school. I think started walking, and then another two guys were doing the same thing.
That's Chris.
They happened to meet, Chris and Mark met secondarily, and then joined up with Dave and Stuart, and that was the sort of beginning of the whole group, really.
Right. So I mean, Chris strikes me as a kind of leadership kind of guy. Anyway.
Yeah.
So if he joins in and does all that, and it's a concerted effort, then there are certain types of people who can be leaders in as much as they can make these things happen.
Yeah.
Hillsong Church, we talked about that. Organised religion, right? The largest the largest congregation of any mega church. And then it all came tumbling down. But people made that happen because they know that people want a community to belong to.
Yeah, but they didn't make it for the community, did they?
No, they made it for themselves.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what? I think a lot of them did. But then Brian, what's-his-face, got enamoured with the fact that he had millions and millions and millions of pounds, or dollars or yen or whatever the fuck, right, that he could access to his own means, which made him powerful. Then he was friends with the police commissioner and the politicians, the prime minister.
Yeah.
Because money corrupts completely. It always has.
Yep.
And you can't have a relationship or connection that's based on money. I mean, does that mean that he passed brown envelopes to the head of the police to get away from his father's child abuse allegations? That makes you think that.
Yeah.
Probably didn't happen. I mean,
certainly opens the possibility of it.
Yeah, I mean, when you put yourself in a position like that, you put yourself above other people. When you're supposed to be a spiritual leader, why do you have to be above anyone? Why can't you be in amongst it? Jesus, yeah, all right, he was the son of God, apparently, right? But as the story goes, but he had his 12 mates, right, who he thought, he knew damn well who was going to betray him, who was going to deny him, who was going to do this and who was going to do that. But he was a man in amongst people, and it was only the people themselves that pushed him up. I think if you find yourself in a place of loneliness, how do you get out of that? How do you find a way to friendship with people in this day and age?
So I think it's particularly difficult now, isn't it? Pubs are closing.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't drink. There isn't that consistent place, as I say, like the church. I mean, if you moved into a new village 100 years ago, you more than likely go to church the first Sunday you're there, meet everybody and become part of the community straight away, wouldn't you? These days, I've lived where I live now since 2019, so 4.5 years, whatever that is. And I think I know the names probably of 8 people in the village.
It's a telling time, isn't it?
It is, yeah, because you go in your car everywhere. There's no shop, there's no pub.
No. So there is no community.
So
there's the post office. In my grand's village, my grandmother's village, didn't know my grand, she died before I was born. Every time I went to my grandmother's, which wasn't very often, but if I was alone, then we'd toddle off to the post office and there was a local shop and everyone knew everyone else. But I remember sitting on a bench outside the post office rolling my eyes because my grandmother knew everyone and they talked to her about every bloody thing. Yeah. And that sense of community was given by a post office. Yeah. Now there are no post offices. They're desks in a Martin's or whatever, and there's all corruption and Fuji's attempt at IT messed up the whole thing.
Yeah, and the same thing with my mum. My mum never drove, right? So the fact that we're in cars all the time, you don't walk past people. My mum would walk everywhere to get the shop in, whatever. And on the odd occasion I'd be at home because I was unwell, she'd say, I'm just popping down the shop, literally to the paper shop. And she'd be gone sometimes for 2 hours.
Because she got chinwagging?
Because she got chatting to the neighbour, and then the other neighbour, and then the guy in the shop, and then saw 2 people on the way home. Whereas now, as I say, I live in a village, don't really know anybody. There is some communication on social media, so I guess social media is one route into a bit of community and a bit of interaction.
Right.
It has its downsides.
I want to loop back to that.
Yeah, we can come back to that. But it's totally different now. The community I have is people at the gym. Again, a handful of them tend to go to the gym 3-4 times a week, whatever. Running club and the people we've met through that, and some other sort of fitness class stuff that we did, that have now that core of people, because I guess you've all got a similar interest, so therefore you've got that to create that bond in the first place. They're there. But that's kind of it, really. And I say I've got schoolmates that are there in moments of crisis and need, but that's social interaction. We keep saying we really should do this more often, and we sort of do, and then we don't, and then a year goes by and you go, oh bloody hell, we haven't actually managed it again, have we? So coming back to the fact it just needs...
But you are still friends.
Yeah, we are still friends. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that is the definition of friendship as well. There are people in the world that you don't have to see, but if you talk to them in any way, it feels comfortable.
Yeah.
And you pick up where you left off.
Yeah, and if you don't talk to them, it's comfortable. That's one thing I've noticed, is that there's people I will happily sit in silence with, and it's not awkward.
Because you're not filling the space.
No, there are other people who go, I feel I need to say something now.
I've got to say something. Unless you actually say that out loud. I feel like I need to say something because I'm a bit sitting here like I don't, I have not been able to be quiet since 1973 on October the 7th when I've issued my first scream, and it's strange. Right. I want to loop back to Facebook and social media. Right.
Yeah.
They call we know that whoever developed Facebook is a man.
Yes.
So Facebook did 2 things, right? It took away our need to remember people's birthdays.
Yeah.
Right? Because as a man who has no memory whatsoever, for whatever reason, if I don't see on Facebook whose birthday it is, I
don't know whose birthday it is.
But also, they called anyone, and I mean anyone who linked to you, friends. And they did that on purpose because it built community.
Yep.
Because they understood, Mark Zuckerberg understood that loss of community in the world needed to be addressed.
Yep.
So they made an online community, which meant in an ideal world, friendship had no barriers. Like borders, space, time, mileage. There were no barriers. But of course, what that also led to was people who didn't know each other slagging each other off for their opinions.
Yep.
Then there became one-upmanship. I know more than you, you're all fucking idiots.
Yep.
The vitriolic hatred. I noticed there's some woman who was on a BBC TV show called Traitors, which I haven't watched, and I don't care about. But she does like them reels, and she she's got like 4 kids and they're in a thing, and she dances in front of it doing stupid crap, right, to the thing, and she's obviously popular and have made money out of it. But everyone on there, man, there's like middle-aged men going, oh well, you must be desperate to do that, blah blah blah, do all this, do that. And it's like, no, you fool. Just by watching it, you've made her more money. By commenting, cha-ching. But your hate, your ability to show hatred for someone you don't know has been allowed by the fake community that is Facebook. If that fake community, right, because it is a community, it says it's a community, if that detracts from the actual communities in the world because they find a negative environment on the net, which is the biggest community ever, surely that will stop people from wanting to be part of a community, therefore leading to more solitude and loss of friends.
I can't argue with that at all.
Good grief.
Don't know if you wanted me to, but no, absolutely.
No,
it's not very social, is it? That's the point.
Yeah, considering it's called social networking, what it should be called is keyboard warrior fuckwits.
Hasn't got quite a ring to it.
If I had the money, I would deliberately start the new Facebook that's called, socially inept keyboard warrior wankers. And, this is the thing. And also, why do you get drawn in? And we've all done it.
Yeah.
Why do we get drawn in and become angry by something somebody says who we don't know? We've got no interaction. They've done it for effect, right? But still, you're drawn into it.
Yeah, you buy it.
I've wanted to kill people who've said, adverse things. You can imagine as well how it was me when I was my full 23 stone and I'm on the internet. Somebody coaching me off for being fat, and it's like, you know what? And I bought into that because I've always been, worried about that. And as I get older, I'm starting very slowly to realise that, my interpretation of how I look is the reason why I react to those things. But, if you're being told all the time that you're shit, even if it's just by people getting an effect, just to be part of it, you're going to take all that to heart and then you're going to shut down.
Yeah.
What's the answer?
And if you... I don't have all the answers. But if you do shut down, so you shut down from social media, for example, you're then also taking yourself away from the small percentage of positivity that you do get out of it, aren't you?
Yep. And you're also shutting the door on a really tangible way of communicating.
Yeah.
Hatred's a horrible thing, but it seems to have become easier to show hatred because you're hiding behind your...
Yeah, and is that a natural thing? Do we all naturally hate rather than love? Is that the nature of humanity coming out?
I think the way that humanity has been steered by the aggressive chase of money, wealth, power.
That drives competition and
competition, and also I'm a better person than you, so I'm going to stand there and tell you you're a fat fuck waster who's got nothing to go on in life, and that makes me feel better because it boosts me up. But actually, it destroys somebody who doesn't know anything else.
So why don't we care about that destroying someone else?
Because we haven't realised.
Because it's not us.
We haven't realised. Because we don't do it. I haven't got an answer. I don't do it. I've never, ever on the internet attacked somebody for no reason.
No, so why do people do that?
Because it makes them feel better. There's something missing in who they are. Their humanity isn't full. They're not a full human being. And that may well be the cause of their loneliness. But on the internet, they can be a king rather than a dustbin dweller.
Yeah. Yeah, so what's the answer, was the question. The answer is... and this wasn't an intentional plan to come up with this. It's the same answer we come with all this stuff. It's communication, isn't it?
Yeah.
Talking to someone.
Yeah.
Realising, as we've just said, that 1 in 3 people think they have no... close friends.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
If you think about the reality of that, there's 3 people in this room.
Yeah.
George is over there. Just in case, Yeah. One of us thinks...
statistically has got no close friends.
We've got no close friends. Well, it's not me, because I do. And I think, sadly, we disprove the rule, because obviously we are all close friends.
Yeah.
So, that's it. But
yeah, we all like each other, so there we go. We've got 2 close friends each. That's it.
Look at us go. I think there is an answer, right? I think the answer as well, above just base communication, is actively look for real community. If you are in a position where you don't have friends, right, then if you're brave enough and you feel able, then I tell you what, Slimming World, right? Okay, now it's full of grannies, right? But there are some people in that, when you go there, it is like it's not vocal therapy, is it? It's talking therapy, because you're in a group,
all with a common
goal and a common issue. Now, there are going to be people you don't like or whatever, but you don't have to interact so much with them. Now, what was the thing in religion that gave people that common ground, right? Can I answer my own question?
Answer your own question, go on.
Right. The set of rules they were given to live by.
Yep.
Because those rules created community.
Yep.
Because all these people are very different, but they were given the same rules to live by. Now, obviously, the rich abused those rules and did whatever the fuck they wanted. But the common man and the level above them live by the same commandments, the same rules given to you by this religion, this structure. Be it Islam, be it Christianity, be it Catholicism, be it whatever the fuck. Right? Even Buddhism has rules. But you wouldn't call them rules. If you have a set of guidelines to live your life by, and you adhere to that, you know, because there's so many people as part of that, then that gives you that community. So community isn't necessarily a room full of friends. It can be a room full of people with a common goal. It can be people who are in trouble who can benefit from watching somebody else succeed. That's the other thing. Everyone thinks that if you're not succeeding, it's all your failure, it's not happening for you. When I first started Slimming World, which is when I lost, you know, I went from 23 stone down to 18.4. I pushed against that, but I basically was told, you're going to do this or you're going to have a gastric band. And I'm like, you can fuck off. I'm not doing that. So I went to Slimming World, right? And there was this woman called Kim who had lost something like 14 stone, right? Which is more than my wife weighs, right? So, you know, she'd done it. And I found that inspirational, even though she was a droning old bag. And also, I lost weight very quickly because when I'm into something, as you know, I'm going to go all in and I'm going to do it. So I lost these stones and 9 pounds in a week, and they're all going, oh, well, I've gone up this week, down 1 week, down, blah. Because I was successful, they felt that they didn't have to lose as much weight, but they had somewhere to come, because the older generation don't have necessarily their group of friends left. They don't have their husbands or wives because they've died.
So they were going for the community.
They were going for the community, which proves our point. If I want to get into old age and solitude and all that later on, when we do go to France and interview my dad, we're going to do a show, just so you know, where all three of us are going to jump in the Land Rover and we're going to go and film for a couple of hours my father in France for 2 shows. One is going to be the history of him, because he grew up during the war. He's seen everything from that point onwards. And then secondly will be about his journey into old age. And we talk about him all the time. You should meet him, because, you know, he's the better part of me has been shaped by him. So that's exciting. And we can talk about, you know, the old age thing with him. But it's important to realise that as you get older, you lose people. You said it. As you get older, you know, your men's group of friends dwindles down because they're not as active in social circumstances and all that. Also, when you get to a certain point, and actually you and I are of that age, people start to fall by the wayside. People start to die. And that is crippling for people.
I mean, the experience I've got of that is my mum, I guess. She lived till she was 93, and by the time she finally passed away, her sister had died, her niece had died, my dad had died, my dad's brother had died. Didn't really have any friends left, and she was very lonely. And part of her desire not to continue living was because there wasn't anybody.
There's no one there for you. I just think that if you can find solitude, if you can find friendship in any group, or if you can just find community. So Slimming World, again, set of rules to live by. You have to change the way you eat, right? Like Nikki's done with me and you. And, you know, those rules gave them a common goal. And I think I'm just going to end on the fact that community seems to be the only way. So if we can somehow, and I know I'm older than the younger generation and I don't think this will ever happen, but one day someone will realise that if they turn off their computer and talk to the people around them, they're going to benefit greatly from that. And I hope that before the end of my life, we see us all reverting to actual interpersonal conversations, even if it has to be on a screen, you know, with people who are around the world. But more and more, I'm thinking that the value of a community and where you live can drive you to losing loneliness.
Yep.
And remember, loneliness is when you're not able to make connections with people. That's the start of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you this, we get an awful lot of messages and comments on our shows, and thank you so much for watching. But look, what we're going to do is start talking about some of those comments as well. So if you watch this and you have a thought about loneliness, if you are indeed lonely and you want a community to join, then join ours. Because then at least you know that every 2 weeks there's a show, there's some shorts coming out, there's some different things. And Lee and I, you know, we're not able to address the world's problems, but what we are allowed to do on this show is look at different coping mechanisms. And that may help somebody, and if it does, that would be fantastic.
Super.
15 coping. Just so you know, I run my Instagram for this show, which is just at Jim Distortion. So if you want to message us or message me directly, go to Instagram, follow me, Jim Distortion. I'll follow you back, and we can have dialogue there. Have a great week.